You're listening to Baachu Talk FM, a podcast for facilities and workplace services professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and I will be sitting down with the facilities and workplace industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry. Today's guest is Rory Murphy, Commercial Director with VINCI Facilities. Rory leads the commercial function for VINCI, the 425 million FM business of VINCI Construction, which delivers FM and building solution work to a range of public and private sector clients throughout the UK. A strong advocate of sustainability and the importance of ESG, Rory is always keen to promote the strategic importance and relevance of FM within the built environment and has been key in the development of VINCI Facilities' responsible business activities and community support. Having started his career in 1987 as a trainee quality surveyor with Taylor Woodrow Construction, Rory progressed his career over the next 20 years across various roles and projects to ultimately becoming the commercial director as he is today. As a fellow of RICS, Rory is a key supporter of the institution and has developed a number of guidance notes and case studies within RICS. Rory has chaired various FM events throughout the years, including the 2020 virtual RICS FM conference and the World Workplace in Barcelona in conjunction with IFMA in 2018. Rory is now the chair of Member Engagement, Experience and Value Working Group within RICS and is helping assist the institution recover from the governance issues from 2021. There's a lot more contributions Rory has done within RICS and the wider FM industry. So let's welcome Rory to Baachu Talk FM. Great to have you with us, Rory.
Morning.
Rory, let's go back to the very beginning. Where were you born? And let's talk about school and education.
Yes, I was born in sunny Portsmouth back 53 years ago, and education-wise, just went to a local Catholic primary school, nothing too fancy, just up the road from where I lived, and then went to again our sort of local comprehensive, so very traditional sort of working class upbringing really in Portsmouth, and lived here ever since. My family are mostly here, although sort of Irish heritage generally. So my mum and dad were both Irish. My dad ultimately was in the Navy. That's why we ended up in Portsmouth, or that's why they ended up in Portsmouth a long time ago. And so mostly my sort of immediate family in and around the south of England, but the majority of sort of my extended family over in Ireland.
Oh wow! Was there any childhood memories coming along in your mind?
Wow, crikey! Well, lots of I had a great childhood. So very loving sort of upbringing, very traditional Irish family, lots of company and lots of people around the house and lots of singing and socialising. That's generally the sort of what I remember from my my childhood. Strict parents in a way, or strict dad. I think around very much. I was youngest of four, so we were all encouraged to make sure we did well at school, and that was the most important thing. So my childhood was very good, very loving, very supportive, Irish parents want you to enjoy your life, but they also want you to sort of be successful. So very good grounding in my childhood. And being the youngest of four, I think I probably got away with everything when I was young, because I've got two older brothers and an older sister, so I think I've always been treated as the youngest, even now when I'm 53. So it's been, and the youngest always. By the time it got to me, I think my mum and dad had pretty much they'd had enough of parenting. So I got off probably a bit lighter than my siblings. But a great childhood and. Enjoyable education. I probably didn't do as well at school as I maybe should have. Got slightly distracted by the time I got through to my O-levels and A-levels. Life was more interesting than studying. And we'll go on to it later. But I think, post-school, I probably flourished more academically than I did in school, because school was, it was fun. And I've got only good memories of my education, although ultimately I probably didn't do quite as well as I maybe should have when we got to my A-levels.
Got it. But while talking to you, thanks for sharing about Irish heritage, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Hope you celebrated it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously, I had this call on the 18th, so so I took it easy yesterday because I don't think you'd have liked me coming on here slightly worse for wear. But yeah, no, it's always a good day to yeah, celebrate the sort of Irish heritage. So yeah, I mean, when I talk about childhood memories, and anyone that dials into this call that is a similar generation to me. When we were kids, we on St. Patrick's Day, we always got sent into school with either a little harp on or some green symbol or a bit of shamrock, just to make sure everybody knew we were Irish. But going to a sort of Catholic school, it was 50% of the people there were adorned with the same little symbols. So yeah, no, I mean, my Irish heritage is very important to me, and yeah, and St. Patrick's Day is obviously a day to celebrate. So.
Totally, Rory. Thanks for sharing. Rory, I think passed out from school, and what happened next?
Yeah, so school-wise, I said A-levels didn't quite go to plan. I think I got a D and an E in my A-levels. It was a World Cup football year, I think, when I did my A-levels. So football, I tended to get more interested in watching the football than I did in studying. So that ultimately meant I didn't go to university, and so I had a bit of a choice around whether I'd sort of go straight into work or sort of retake my A-levels. So I decided to go into work, and I got a job as a sort of trainee QS with a small painting and decorating firm just for a year, which was fine. Gave me a bit of an introduction to the construction industry. It wasn't necessarily something I needed to do. I remember looking and dates this whole thing is that I remember seeing the advert in my local newspaper for this job as a trainee quantity surveyor. I'm not sure many people apply for jobs that way these days, but so I got a job there for a year, and then ultimately, Taylor Woodrow, who were a big construction company, this was back in 1987, they were building the new city centre in Portsmouth, a big new shopping centre, and they were advertising for a trainee QS. So I went there and had that interview and ultimately got that job, and that was the beginning really of my career in construction and ultimately FM. But and then I began to do day release at work. So went to do day release as trainee quantity surveyor, and progressed through that over the years in terms of to get my CIOB, so Chartered Institute of Building, and then I went to do a master's degree in construction management, ultimately at Portsmouth University, again on a day release basis, and then that led me into becoming a member of the RCS and a lot of the stuff we talked about later. But I had a brilliantly supportive employer, and that's really shaped me, I think, in terms of, we'll talk about that a lot later, but there was nothing that Taylor Woodrow at the time and the people that were managing my career wouldn't allow me to do. So I was able to study on 1 day a week, and we were working 4 days a week, which for me was a great blend. And then subsequently to go on and sort of do my professional qualifications, then be allowed to go on and do a master's, was fantastic over the period. And that gave me the foundation from an academic perspective to sort of build my career. And you don't realise it at the time, but it certainly shaped, on reflection, it shaped how I think about a lot of things now. And we'll come on later in this conversation around why I am like I am and what I feel about the sort of younger generation coming into our sector. But without the support of a fantastic employer when I was 18 through to 28 probably across that period, then I certainly wouldn't be sitting here today. However you announced me as an elder or a veteran of the FM business, so made me feel slightly queasy. I think I like to see myself as, I'm not sure I'd like to see myself as a veteran yet, but yeah, so it was a good time. And I think for me, doing day release and working 4 days a week as a QS, and you got an awful lot of responsibility at that age, and it was a great experience for me, and made lots of mistakes, had lots of support, but learned about dealing with people. So the first project I was on, nowadays I suppose would be, I don't know, circa 100 million type construction project, so 80 to 100 million. At the time it was 40 odd million, but you were dealing with bricklayers, ground workers, steel fixers, carpenters. Then you're dealing with your professional teams and your architects and your clients and local residents, and it was a great time. I mean, it was a very different time as well. I mean, in the construction industry then, in the late 80s, early 90s, it was work hard, play hard was very much we were working in a city centre environment, so an awful lot of sort of socialising, and built some relationships with people there that have been lifelong, really, in terms of my career. And so I had a really good grounding in construction in the first sort of 4 or 5 years of my career, and subsequently then went on to sort of develop my career and run projects of my own. And you sort of get your first project as a young QS, and then you go on to a sort of a bigger project and own that as a QS with a team of QSs, and then ultimately look after an area, then a region, and then ultimately I was, after 20 odd years with Taylor Woodrow, a sort of commercial director for all our high-rise residential projects all around the UK. So yeah, it was a great, that grounding of 20 years in construction, and then the last 14 years in FM, but the first 20 years were really a fantastic leveler for me, and taught me everything now.
Totally. I think what a ground up support that you had from Taylor Woodrow, and then it gave you a perspective. One end, you were learning technically, making yourself much more, in the sector. Other end, you were building your project management, social skills, working with the team, and from both within the team, with the subcontractors and others as well. Amazing, Rory. So 20 years, you might have seen some very interesting construction projects while working with Taylor Woodrow. Talk us through some of the interesting projects that you
So I started. I started on Portsmouth Cascades, which was a shopping centre and still is, but it's probably coming to the end of its useful life now. It's a bit of a shame when the first thing you built is coming to a stage where it probably needs to be demolished and something else built. But so that was my first ever project I did. Other standout projects for me, I suppose, projects that were important to me, was the very first job I did on my own was a job at Guildford High School for Girls, which was, again, the context of these, it was £1 million new build project, which again sounds very small, but nowadays would be, again, 5 or 6 million. But the first job I was responsible for the project commercially, and started to teach me about stakeholder management. So you were working right within the middle of a school. So you had parents, kids, you had the academic fraternity. And outside of that, I then I spent a bit of time with our construction management teams at Gatwick and at Southampton Airport, which was fascinating. So I worked at Gatwick Airport for a number of years. You sort of lose track of how many years you may have worked there, but 4 years probably at Gatwick. And they were doing sort of upgrade and refurbishment projects to the departure lounges. So we were working airside, we were working non-airside, lots of, an unbelievably stringent safety environment. So that was probably the first area I went to where health and safety is 1,000,000% important everywhere, but on the airport, again, it was, you were working next to live aircraft on taxiways. We were in another world in terms of safety. So, and again, the first project I'd been where we were working days and nights. So, and I was doing a slightly different role there, doing a sort of construction management role, met some fantastic people, worked with some brilliant engineers and constructors. And so they were fascinating technical projects when you work on an airport. It was very enjoyable. And then I came off those and looked after a big residential scheme down in Poole, which became famous, infamous really, down on Poole Quay, which was a project where developing sort of 110 luxury apartments, and the developer went bust halfway through, which is not something I've ever encountered before. So the whole project stopped. We had to negotiate to get paid for ourselves, but then also the banks bought the site and still wanted to build it out. So very complex negotiations with banks and subcontractors to get people restarted, and from our own negotiations. So a really fascinating, commercially technical project there. And again, working throughout all my career, I think that the thing that sticks to me all the time is not always the buildings, it's the people. So every time I think of a project, I think of the people I worked with, and the people I worked with down in Poole. A lot of people were staying away down in Poole because of where it is. It's a little bit remote, I suppose, for most people. So we had a very strong social connection with everybody there. And also it was a challenging project in terms of commercially, and because of the developer going bust, and it was also in the local news. And ultimately that job got built out and is still there now. And it's one of those projects that sort of was a bit of a game changer for me from a career wise, because it was a project that was very high profile. We managed as a team to deliver it and finish the project, and from then on I began to look after sort of regions and broader projects. So then from there I started looking at, I was much less on the project myself, but then sort of visiting projects, and this was around sort of the last property boom, so 2006 to 2008, and we were building projects, high-rise residential projects all over the country, so Birmingham, Scotland, Manchester, Leeds, and they were all sort of fascinating in their own right. And for me, the first time I'd seen there was so much of this building going on around the country, you began to think, who on earth is buying all this property? How does it actually work? And this was so leading up to 2008, just before the property crash, there were thousands upon thousands of apartments and flats being built around the UK, and you just thought, this isn't sustainable. So again, that was, I suppose, for me, beginning of my own maturing into understanding what we do in construction versus the economy versus the market versus I mean, obviously the banks sort of went pop in 2008, but off the back of the property bubble, really, in terms of, particularly in the UK. So for me, it was they were a great time, and visiting projects sort of all around the UK, the different dynamics, the different teams, and from sort of Cardiff out in the west up into sort of Edinburgh and Glasgow, and then down into sort of Birmingham and other places. So as I say, that you can't, when you've worked in the construction industry, you can't help but always walk past a building you had some small part in and go, oh, I built that. But even if you're a young QS that literally all you did was order a few doors, but you do, yeah, I'm fascinated with some of the projects we've built, and I love to sort of go past them. But actually, I always remember the people and the teams that we work with, because that was absolutely that's the best bit. That's why people, I think, work in construction and FM, is because it's and it sounds a bit twee, but it is a people industry. You can't create, you create things together. You turn up somewhere, and you create this sort of you create buildings from all of your combined efforts. So there's nothing more rewarding than that, I don't think. And then it's there for a lifetime, hopefully a lifetime, but it's there to see. So yeah, so construction for me has been a great education, and I think I've enjoyed the way in which to create buildings, and we'll come on to facilities management later, that it is about how you work as a team, and it is about combining people's skills, be that from the craftsmen and the sort of artisans that deliver the work, through to people that have designed it, that plan it, that measure it, so it's been a great education and a great career to date. So
yes, construction, as you said, you have seen the goods and the bads, and also it grounded you into the person as you are today, Rory. And 20 plus years in construction, acquisition of Taylor Woodrow by VINCI, moved into FM. How was it? Did you find any parallels between construction and FM, or is there any parallels?
They're different. I mean, I think, yeah, are there any parallels? Crikey. I mean, I think obviously there's a general issue around understanding your stakeholders and working as a team. I think FM is more of a service industry. In construction, although it's less these days, but in construction, you may well work for one client and you build a job for a client, and then you may never see that client again. So that often drives maybe bad behaviours in the construction industry. But as I say, that's less common now. That lots of people work for the same customer time and time again. But in FM, it's much more of a service industry. So you have a relationship with your customer. So you're delivering a service where you do have to work together. So on construction, the analogy we sort of run is that in construction, you're given a site. You're given a site by the customer. You put a hoarding around it, and a year later they come back and you give them a building, and you may not see them that often. Whereas in facilities management, particularly, you're next to your customer, with your customer all the time. And in our world, in the business I look after, we do facilities management and building solutions. So we do sort of refurbishment, upgrade work. So it's not full on construction. We don't tend to build anything new, but we are forever working, whether it's our building solutions teams or our facilities management teams, in our clients' premises. So we are fundamental to their delivery, and so it's a different mindset, because and in a way a more rewarding mindset, because you're there for the long term, and you want to satisfy that customer, you want them to be successful, and ultimately if you're successful and they are successful and you're supporting them in the delivery of what they need to deliver, then that relationship will grow, and then that permeates also down into your relationships with your own teams and with your supply chain, in that it is a team effort in the same way as construction is, but it's a team effort for the long term. So you're always looking to stay together. So yeah, there are parallels. I think it's been interesting. Technically, I think if I went back to 2008, when I first got involved with facilities management, people, and this was one of the reasons I sort of got heavily involved with the RICS. I think I came into facilities management and people had a very dim view of it. People didn't look at it very professionally, and that for me, being the commercial director for a facilities management business, didn't sit well for me. And I want people that work in FM to be proud to work in FM. So very soon into this role, I got involved with the RICS, and I wanted not to professionalize FM, because it's not that it wasn't professional before, but I think it's become highly technical now. If you look at where we are in 2022 versus where we were in 2008, and we'll talk a bit about it later. The technical necessity in facilities management now is very different to maybe how it was back in 2008. People's perception of it, in terms of, and people, I think people only saw FM as almost a soft services sort of approach, where the hard services side of things, people didn't value, maybe, I think it is the thing. And that's, for me, what drove what I wanted coming into this role, was that I wanted people to understand the technical nature of what we do, and even on the soft side of our services, understand the importance of those to customers, and why that's important for the teams, and making sure that the teams that deliver those soft services are respected and applauded, so it was, so coming into FM was an eye-opener for me. It was certainly more innovative and more forward-thinking. You could try things in facilities management. I think construction, if I go back pre-2008, was very traditional, and it was a lot more, not a lot more, it could be more confrontational, antagonistic. I think there's a culture in construction. There was, I think that's changing, but there's a culture in construction that was a little bit more a little bit more confrontational, whereas you mostly don't see that in facilities management. It's about working together and delivering a service. So
totally, Rory. I think thanks for sharing. And again, that's a very interesting perspective. So you have seen, as you rightly said, both the construction and FM evolving over the past 30, 35 plus years now. Anything comes to your mind how you used to do before to how you used to do, how things are being done today?
Certainly. I think the whole digital agenda has completely transformed if across my career. I mean, crikey, if you go back to, I started in the industry in 1987, and now if you look at the sort of digital development of digital twins, BIM models, the whole digital built environment now is a world away from where we'd have ever imagined it was. I mean, when I started as a young trainee QS, we had big drawing racks, and every drawing was updated, and part of being a young QS was that I'd be forever driving to the repro point place to get the drawings updated and bringing them back, and it was all paper, it was physical, and people were circling things, and you change stuff, and then you'd print it, and then you'd take it out to the team on site. And I think this linkage between BIM and digital twins, but not necessarily just for what I've seen in facilities management. It is for renovation work, or for using digital twins to improve sort of asset management, and then the sort of growth of AI and predictive maintenance, and these types of things are all happening now over the last few years, where at speed. I mean, I think the whole asset management piece and the digitalization of the built environment has absolutely transformed over the period that I've been working, and also I think there's been a lot of change in terms of businesses that operate, and I think I've seen a shift certainly in the last few years, which is something I'd applaud, and is something that I'm passionate about, is the sort of whole shift of doing business in the right way, and making sure that you do business in terms of supporting the sort of social agenda and environmentally, and I know that's becoming a real, certainly in the last 18 months, 2 years, it's become a really big issue, but I think sort of certainly for the last 10 years, 10, 12 years of my career, that's always been important, to make sure we do things right as well, and feel like you're proud to deliver what you deliver, and you don't always get it right, but I think that's been a real driver for me, and I've worked with some fantastically intelligent and passionate people that have helped shape my thinking around what it means to be in business, and what it means to have a business like ours that's got 2,200 people around the country, and what it means to sort of lead those teams. So I think what's changed over I mean, crikey, over the 35 years, probably everything. But for me, in terms of what now makes me think, what do I see is accelerating and transformational, certainly. The digital environment that we work within now is we've just all got to keep up, and we've got to upskill. I mean, we joked about me being a veteran earlier. It's that we've got to make sure we don't fall behind ourselves. We've got to upskill ourselves and keep up with where we're going. So those are certainly some of the changes I've seen in the industry.
Totally. Thank you, Rory. Rory, I think, as you rightly said, for the past 2 years, we had COVID, and for some, it's still continuing as we speak. How did you adapt to COVID environment, and how did VINCI adapt to COVID environment? And talk us through this 2.5 years of transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting time. I mean, if we rewind right back to the 23rd of March 2020, when we all got sent home, I think I suppose initially it was from a personal perspective a bit of crikey. How the hell are we going to deal with this? I mean, I'm sure there'll be lots of business leaders come on here and they go, yeah, we had a contingency plan, we knew exactly what we were going to do. It's like everybody just went, crikey, okay, right, now how do we manage that? So I suppose we went into sort of crisis management for a few weeks, in terms of calls every day and planning ourselves, and the focus absolutely on keeping our team safe, but equally so, how are we going to deliver on the ground as well? So we were operating critical infrastructure, like lots of people do, in terms of hospitals and schools. And I appreciate the schools closed, but not all of them. So we had our teams going into projects. We had teams on live building projects that we needed to keep operating. We had teams working in sectors such as retail that literally shut down. So what were we going to do with them? And we had to make sure that we were making decisions. Out with as well, government policy was moving quicker than ever. I mean, things were changing on a daily basis. I mean, if you think about how government policy changes generally in our sector, it's steady and you can see it coming. Everybody was reacting to change on an almost daily basis. So in terms of we got our management sort of structures aligned. We worked a lot, obviously, on teams, but the majority of our teams were still working. I mean, we had a lot of people on our projects. From a personal perspective, and this has stayed with me, two things. One, on a personal level, I didn't know how much I liked routine until I didn't have one. So that was something in terms of going to work and going to the office and going to projects, and then to be catapulted into working from home for a period, I found personally quite difficult and quite odd and disruptive. But and I had both my kids back from university. My wife wasn't working because she'd furloughed, and so the whole world turned upside down for 3 months from a personal perspective, which in hindsight was strange. But from a work perspective, the thing that really resonated with me, and to this day I say it to our teams, is that it made me understand how responsible I was, and we were, our senior team, for the 2,200 people that work for us. I've never felt the responsibility so much, and that really weighed on me in a good way. I don't mean in an oppressive way, but it meant that you understood that the livelihoods of 2,200 people were in your hands around some of the decisions you were making. So were we furloughing people? Were we keeping people safe? Were we, and it's been a really, that period for me made me realise the importance of the role I do in supporting the 2,200 people that work on our projects. They all do fantastic work every day. They were going to work. I felt responsible, and again, it's a personal opinion. I felt that I'm sitting here in my ivory tower whilst people are going out to work, and we couldn't be out there with the teams because if we'd have gone and visited all our hospitals, one, you couldn't anyway, and two, we'd be the problem if we started moving between hospitals and schools. So I felt like cut off from the teams from that perspective, but then had to focus on, right, my responsibility is from a commercial perspective, I've got lots of responsibilities to protect the business commercially, but by doing that, I'm protecting the livelihoods and careers and lives of all the people that work for us. So that was really interesting. And we made some videos around that COVID time, and there's one that really sticks with me. We just did 1 minute videos, and it still makes me choke up now to listen to it. Is because the retail sector had gone quiet and the health sector was obviously very busy, we asked a number of our retail engineers whether they could go and work in some of our hospitals to give resilience. Now, they didn't have to, but it was just clearly, and obviously there was some nervousness about doing that, but they did, and went over, and they were all fully inducted and kept safe and carried all the same protocols and everything else. And we had a video of one of our, so we videoed people's experiences through COVID, just 1 minute snips. And we had this engineer that reflected on it. He said, I was going to one of the hospitals, I was nervous, but I went, and everybody was brilliant, and we did everything was safe. And he said at the end of it, he said, all I wanted to know was that I'd get home safe to my family afterwards. And that just, to me, that summarized in plain English what we were going through. It was like our responsibility was to make sure we didn't put anybody at risk, but equally so we had a responsibility to the wider National Health Service, but it was just the way he said it. It wasn't rehearsed. It was just honest. And so for me, to this day, that stuck with me in terms of my role. Whilst I'm the commercial director, my role as a member of the senior management team is to those people on the ground. That's it. I mean, that's my role, is to make sure that we are successful commercially, but we're successful for our teams and our supply chain in the same way, that we're sending them safely to work. So COVID for me really made me understand what my role was. And then as we got through COVID, I suppose the first 3 to 6 months were the most disruptive, and then we began to learn to work with it, and we kept our procedures in place. And obviously we had a couple of blips at the latter part of last year where we sort of, Omicron kicked in, so it sort of flared up again. So, but I'd credit all our teams were unbelievably excellent throughout that period, and took on the precautions and worked through the sort of safe systems of work. And I couldn't praise our teams enough in that period. And it's easy for me and us and the sort of managers of businesses, because we've worked at home, and it always frustrates me when people talk about, we've had to work from home, where I'll keep reinforcing that of our business, 2,000 people were still going to work every day. We might have had 200 people working at home, but it isn't a them and us. It's we should all be sort of supporting those teams on the ground. So it's been a disruptive period for everybody across a whole vast different ways. So whether it's from a personal perspective or from a professional perspective, but in some ways it's been a real eye opener for me, and in other ways it's been a lost 2 years. So.
Totally. I think well said there. I think that engineer pretty much nailed it. You're totally right. I visited a hospital My very close friend was head of nurse, and it's amazing that PPE kit that people have to wear,
Yeah.
and the amount of hours that you need to spend, like 8 hours, 10 hours, just to support them. And they were always been FM. There's always been a low-paid workforce, working late, standing in front with the NHS and also with critical services to do that was really amazing. And I think there, over the process, I think the industry also lost a few colleagues, which now nobody anticipated. But again, I hope we all remember those fallen heroes who we kind of went down on this as well. But that's very positive, Rory. I mean, like, thank you for sharing. During that process, one end, you evolved from construction to FM, and on the other side, within few years, you were settling and doing other things. But you were very, very active in RICS and and the other institutions. Talk us through. You started with RICS early on, even early on with Taylor Woodrow. Talk us through RICS, RICS FM, your contributions and everything.
Yeah, so the RCS, I've really enjoyed. I mean, it was more of a, I had a chance encounter, I think, but when I met someone at an event who, and this was probably 2009, 2010. I've lost track of the years, but and it was clearly a time when FM wasn't particularly strong within the RCS, but that they certainly wanted to drive this sort of FM agenda, and that, as I said earlier, that actually aligned it dovetailed quite subtly into what I wanted to achieve as well, because I wanted to represent, I wanted to establish facilities management as a professional career. So actually those two things aligned for me, and I got involved right back then with some case studies and just beginning to talk about, I think the original sort of strapline was professionalising FM. And I'd only been in FM 2 years. So in hindsight, I look back now at some of the things I've said and think, Christ, I knew nothing back then. So I was a novice myself. So I do sometimes look back at some of the articles I wrote or was involved with in 2010 and think, oh, yeah, okay, you're no real expert. Especially as I've grown to meet some of the people I've met, some of the people you've had on this podcast, where I think, Christ, these people know a shed load more than I do about facilities management. But actually, for me, it was then the ability to begin to shape the sort of competencies that within the RCS. It was beginning to write around. The RCS is a fantastic global brand, obviously, but actually, it's unarguable that facilities management should be a material part of the RCS, because the RCS is all about the built and natural environment. And if you think about assets in their broadest sense, you think just in my own career in terms of the designing of buildings, the construction of buildings, the operation of buildings, and then the dismantling of buildings, the life cycle that projects go through, or the natural environment. FM plays a massive part of that. Now, clearly, if we can get involved in design and we can get involved in construction, then actually the operation of the building is easier and better, and the user experience will be better. So for me, it's completely unarguable that facilities management should be part of a major part of the RCS, and that's taken effort. I mean, undoubtedly the RCS has it has a lot of pathways, and FM wouldn't have been the strongest, and if you think from my own background from a quantity surveying fraternity, that's a very strong cadre within the RICS, but there are quantity surveyors in construction businesses and in facilities management, although we might call them something different. But so for me, getting involved in that was an absolute pleasure. And then over time, we developed an FM professional group, which did some great stuff. I mean, clearly over the last couple of years, things have stalled, but we're working to solve that now. And it was through that sort of professional group we began to meet like-minded professionals, and begun to develop proposals and develop sort of standards and case studies that talked about that begun to introduce what facilities management was and why it was strategic, and talking about and whether strategic is the right word. I know people get hung up about that, but beginning to talk about user experience and beginning to talk about asset life cycles or whole life costing, or and from an RICS perspective, clearly the RICS is a sort of surveying institution, so it's about measurement and it's about data. So absolutely, facilities management lent itself to that in terms of what we do, and I think over time we've done a great job of positioning it within the RICS and people understanding the role that we play, and that's been it's been very enjoyable.
Totally. I think you just we just told it in a very very easy way, but I think behind the scenes there is a lot of work that you and people did over the years here. Rory, talk us through about the the different initiatives that you talked about, like the 2020 virtual RICS event, or the RICS World Regional Board. To talk us about FM and RICS in particular. How does it work, and who's part of it, and then any other guidance or any other things why people
Yeah, no. So I mean, we had so I mean, from a professional pathway perspective, there is an FM pathway within the RICS, so you can become a chartered FM surveyor, and so I've worked with the team there, and there's a great professional team within the RICS, but also with others sort of external to RICS around shaping the competencies to reflect what facilities managers do. When we first looked at the competencies, now the way it works in the RICS is that you have a competency that could spread across more than one pathway. So you have to write the competency in a way that captures a bit of everything. So we went through a lot of the competencies to introduce phraseology that would resonate with people that are doing facilities management. And over time, and this was a few years ago, we also introduced some competencies that were just associated with facilities management. And looking back, things like asset management would be one you might think of, or again, this already sounds out of date. We said at the time, like big data was a competency back a few years ago, which has probably been sharpened up now. But that whole terminology, but how you use data to drive decisions was in the FM world was something that competency was required. And then things like preventative planned maintenance was another thing that probably wouldn't have ever been in there before. So you had a pathway. So we helped develop those pathways, and those pathways exist. And we established, as I said, quite a number of case studies. And then we've had RICS sort of FM conferences over the last 5 or 6 years, and we've sort of toyed around with the names of them and how they were structured. And then last year we had, in 2020, we had a sort of virtual, or 2 years ago actually, a virtual one, which was very good. And it sort of brings together sort of various parties across the whole FM sector, whether that's suppliers or customers or owner occupiers. That's one thing I think the RICS can do. It can appeal to a broader church, I think, of participants. So you don't want to be presenting facilities management to lots of facilities managers. That's sort of pointless, because they should know. I think you should be presenting the importance of facilities management to people that operate buildings and own buildings and invest in buildings, or are users of buildings, as well as your peers. But I think we need to understand, or the market needs to understand, the wider importance of facilities management. And I think over time, clearly in the current agenda, moving on to the importance of so environmental improvements and how facilities management can be involved in that, or responsibility in terms of social value generation, the fact that obviously facilities management employs a lot of people in the sort of lower pay sector. So what are responsibilities in that? So that's all been very good. And I mean, and I think over the last, during COVID, I mean, if we go back 2 years, I think the RICS and lots of other businesses and institutions has had its own issues, and it's probably stalled a bit in terms of our input in terms of facilities management. And the role I'm doing now with the RICS is to help around leading this working group around member engagement and experience and value, because there's been, I think the sort of governance issues over the last couple of years has sort of undermined people's perception of the institution, and they're certainly it's driven some problems around engagement and people's perception of the value for money of the qualification or the institution, or being a professional. And and then there's been issues around the actual experience of contacting and working with the RICS. But and now with all that feedback, we are working as a member group with the exec team in the RICS to actually deliver things together and try and solve these problems, taking feedback directly from the members in terms of the membership feedback through various surveys, but then addressing them sort of one by one. And I am, look, I've said right from the start, I think if we go back to my own career in terms of the importance of developing the next generation of professionals and people being supported through their careers and nurturing them so they can have careers as long as mine, it's fundamentally based in is in giving them a qualification or a professional route that they can achieve. So that really drives me. So I'll do anything, mostly anything, to help the RICS be successful. And it's easy to sit back and go, oh, there's all these issues that need dealing with in it, and they're not great at this and they're not great at that. But actually, they are great at 1,000 things, and they've got the staff at the RICS that I've got to know over the last sort of 12 to 14 years work tirelessly behind the scenes, and then it's a tough place to be in some of the sort of noise that's around the institution over the last year. I think it is changing now, and I'm happy, more than happy, to be part of the change, because, and it's nothing. It generally it's nothing to do with me. I actually want to be able to hang my boots up in 10 years and just go, you know what, I've done my bit, and I've seen youngsters coming through, and we've got surveyors coming through that are getting chartered, and I've sort of counselled a few through myself in terms of getting them to be qualified, and they'll go on to have great careers, and that's sort of, yeah, that's our role. I think that's our role as directors of organisation, directors of businesses, or managers, whatever you want to call ourselves. We've got to nurture the next generation, and we've got to give them the facilities to do it. Now, if we put a downer on one of our most prestigious institutions, then all that does is limit people's career possibilities. So we've got to give them the best chance, make that qualification as expert as possible, make it as respected as possible, and then they can have great careers. But make it relevant, obviously, make it relevant to what they're doing, but make it stretching and make it professional and make it worthwhile, and they'll have great careers. So my involvement with the RICS, it is multifaceted. One, it's around the next generation, but two, I think we as facilities management professionals have an unbelievable impact on a number of the big ticket issues that we're currently facing, whether it's economic issues, environmental issues, issues around investment. You know, we've got a lot to give.
Totally, I think you've well said there, Rory. And I mean, the listeners would greatly appreciate all the efforts that you're doing, not just for RICS, but overall for the community as well. But also, collaboration is key. And as you rightly said, you also work alongside IFMA and trying with that IFMA's things. And so, talk us through of the IFMA plus RICS. And
yeah, I mean, the IFMA and RICS sort of collaboration is sort of been put aside, I think, for now. I mean, I wasn't close to the organisation of that, although ultimately we I was one of the sort of IFMA board in the UK. So again, the fit between IFMA being a sort of broadly American organisation and the RICS felt like a good fit in terms of the sort of global agenda, and I think that's probably still valid. I don't think culturally the two organisations came together brilliantly, so I don't think that necessarily worked. But I think, and I don't know. I generally don't know why that didn't work in terms of the sort of integration, or not integration, the sort of collaboration between the two institutions. But certainly, again, I was lucky enough to meet some great people from the sort of IFMA side globally, and some of our team in the UK. I think everybody's got the same. Everybody wants the same thing. I think when you bring together two institutions that are very, very different in terms of their approach. I mean, IFMA is fundamentally a facilities management association, clearly, where facilities management is part of the RICS. So the RICS, I want our professionals in the RICS to be broad professionals. I don't want people to be an expert in facilities management. You need to understand the broadest picture. So you understand the influence that facilities management has on the built environment, not just be an expert in facilities management, if that makes sense. So I think the RICS sort of appeal to me is that you're able to be involved in any aspect of it, and whether or not culturally those two things misaligned or didn't come together, but the two great organizations, and the sort of we never quite worked out the sort of chapter in the UK and the RICS professional group. That never quite worked, although it was broadly the same people, and the whole sort of governance structures, I think, were different. And I think you throw into the mix then that that COVID came along and other issues came along. I think it's sort of that collaboration is clearly not particularly there in terms of, or it is not that visible. Again, I think it's something in the future to consider, but certainly within the sort of IFMA chapter within the UK, with COVID, IFMA chapters are very much based on events and bringing people together. Now, if you can't have those in COVID, then there was nothing to keep going. So but it was interesting times, and World Workplace are good events. I mean, I went to one in Barcelona, went to one in Stockholm, haven't been recently, but again, that they bring together a broader church of FM professionals from around the globe, but it is quite FM focused, clearly. So.
Totally. I think as you kind of alluded to, end of the day, most of them are volunteers, Rory, and when we all are firefighting for our own survival on the personal pace and also keeping our business running, then go back and represent the institutions that we also support. Now, there is limited time.
And I think that's the point. That's a really good point, actually. It's a point that people forget, actually, is that, that is a very good point, is that a lot of the people that I've worked with on the IFMA board and the RICS board and any of the RICS activities, I think, are given their time free. They're volunteering to do this stuff. So it does make me smile sometimes when people want to sort of snipe at activities, and it's like, hang on, look, we're all volunteering doing this to make the sector better for everybody and to be a better place to work in. We're not getting paid to do any of this work. It's so you're right. It is important to highlight that people, and you're right. In COVID times, we had difficult jobs to do ourselves, and we've all had to concentrate on those things as well as drive the institutions.
Totally. Rory, I think for the past hour or so, we just talked about your early life career. You were 20 plus years, Taylor Woodrow, VINCI, COVID, RICS, and related FM, how the whole thing works around IFMA collaboration, and so on. So let's loosen up and move to part two. Tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
Yeah, I saw this on the question. I was thinking 3 things people don't know about me. Well, what do I do? I think people know. I'm a bit of an open book. There's not many things that people wouldn't know about me. What do they know? I like my triathlons. So I compete, or I have for the last 2 years, compete for Ireland as in my age group around Europe and the world. So I've done that for the last few years, or not the last 2 years, but I think I've represented Ireland at the European Championships for the last 5 years up till COVID, which was good in my age. So that was fantastic. So the last place I raced in was Romania, but I've raced in Italy and Spain and a couple of other countries. So, and before that, I did a couple of Ironman triathlons, which was again a few years ago. But so I like to keep fit. So that's one of the things people do know that about me, though. So it's not very exciting. I suppose my other 2 things: I'm a big football fan. I don't talk about my football very often. Big Portsmouth fan. So that's my sort of other passion, I think, in terms of football, although that's more of a curse than a pleasure. So that's from a football side. And I suppose personal, I've got 2 fantastic kids. I don't talk about my kids very often. They're both doing brilliantly well. They're great for me. So so I've got both of those are at university, so I don't see very much of them at the moment. And so I think I tend to. I think people know a lot about me professionally. I don't think people know very much about me personally. So so my kids are massively important to me. They and family life. So so there's nothing untoward, and certainly nothing I'd say on a podcast that people will go, crikey, I didn't really Rory does that. So it's I'm relatively open book. I think people that know me mean that I'll chat about anything to anybody, as you might have seen on this podcast. But
Thank you, Rory. I think it was a fantastic, keeping fit and beautiful family.
Yeah.
Football. Thank you for sharing, Rory. I think now we are officially entering what we call rapid random fire. No right or wrong answers. Whatever comes in your mind, let
Yeah.
it be. So, what's the most courageous thing you have ever done so far?
Courageous. Oh, for my 50th birthday, I got a skydive, so I did that. So it was a tandem one, so that's slightly yeah. So it wasn't quite on my own, but I did a tandem skydive, which was yeah. I'm not sure if it was my wife trying to kill me, because I'm not sure that's the thing you'd give someone for your 50th birthday. But I did that, and I actually had a funny story. The chap that was, I'd just come back from Romania, where I'd raced a triathlon, and I raced in a place in the middle of nowhere in Romania, in Targa. And the chap that was strapping me up, we started chatting because I'd chat to anybody, and we were just talking, and we got onto where he was from. And he said, "I'm from Romania." I was like, "All right," and I said, "I've just come back from Romania," and I ended up I'd raced in his hometown, which you could not have made up, because this place in Romania was literally the middle of nowhere. So he was like the nicest fella for that way. He was a nice fella anyway, but from then on, we literally didn't stop talking from the minute we started. And you have to get to know someone pretty well when you're doing a tandem skydive. So we were tied together at the waist, and yeah, no. So chatted him all the way up, and then jumped out of a plane with him at whatever 20,000 feet. So yeah, not something I'd necessarily rush back to do again, but it was that was probably the most courageous thing I've done, or ridiculous thing I've done. So
I think even running 5 kilometers is courageous thing for me. Let alone go and do a triathlon, that too representing Ireland, and then
yeah.
go and do skydiving. Nice, Rory. So, what would be the hardest thing for you to give up?
Oh, this will be easy for some people to know. So red wine. I think red wine or a beer before dinner. I think they're the two things that I might really struggle. That it's the only reason. I think that it's the only reason I do a lot of exercise as an offset to my my sort of wine intake. But yeah, no, I think yeah, interesting. I've had my medical yesterday from work, so it was even. So I think I need to cut down on my red wine, cut down on my sugar. So both of those two things would be hard for me to give up. So I think yeah, I think giving up red wine would be my absolute killer. So and there'd be a few people listening to this will go, yeah, but I agree with that. That would be difficult. Red wine or beer. If I had to choose one of those, that would be the impossible scenario. So
That's it. That's good. So, what was your favorite game to play as a child?
oh. Favorite game. So I enjoyed playing football. So I always played, if we're talking sport, but yeah, or cards. We used to play. So as a game, we used to play cards as quite a lot as a family. So I used to play pontoon with my old nan in Ireland, who used to play for money, but those days for pennies as ever. But yeah, I used to like playing with my old granny, who used to take great delight in ripping as many pennies out of me as possible. So I enjoyed cards, and then football wise, I really enjoyed that growing up, and also went on to sort of help coach my lad and some of his teams. So I really enjoyed. Yeah, I've always enjoyed sport really. But yeah, games wise, I like a game of cards, and yeah, certainly football was sort of my distraction when I was young.
Got it. So, which superhero you want to be and why?
Oh, superhero. There you go. Yeah, I think I'm not great at superheroes, so I'm not a big Marvel comic. So Superman, I suppose. When was it? Superman went and spun the world back the other way, didn't he, to save time? So maybe I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind having the ability to go back and spin the world back the other way, and maybe change a few things along the way. So it's like, I think Superman did that in one of his films. But yeah, no, I'd like. I haven't quite got the body for it, I think, in terms of Superman. So yeah, maybe Superman or Mr. Muscle would be nice instead. Either of those. But yeah, I think Superman might be my superhero.
So, if you could go back to history, a point in time in history, which part of history would you like to go, and who would you like to meet?
Oh wow, who would I like to meet? Who would fascinate me? Um, yeah, there's a question in terms of historical. Um, yeah, that is interesting. I'm trying to think how far back we would go. I think don't know, who would you say, back to yeah, so I wouldn't go back that far. Someone like Nelson Mandela, I'd like to meet him, and he'd be an interesting man to talk to. I just think someone that's principled. So there's lots of people that are principled, I get that, but I suppose off the top of my head, someone I'd like to go and how you could, yeah, the sort of ability to be. I'm always respectful of people that are so are so, and there's lots of them obviously, that are so passionate about what they believe in that they'll sacrifice everything. I mean, that's and we've seen a lot of it now, aren't we, in the world? But yeah, I think to meet people that have literally given up everything for what they believe, and then to have come out and then almost achieve what they fought for. I mean, that's just a very I love that journey. So having been principled enough to do what he did, and then be in prison for it, and then come out, yeah, that would be interesting. But I'd say there's yeah, I'm fascinated by people that are principled, and are willing to really stand up for what they think. They inspire me, I think, and there's lots of them, but I can't think of them all in one go. But yeah, to stand up and fight for what you believe in is it's unbelievably motivating for me.
That's brilliant. So if you could be an Olympic athlete, other than running and triathlon, what sport would you like to compete?
Oh, I tell you what, I do like. I mean, as you said, Olympics, so I can choose any. I'd love to do the bobsleigh. I mean, I watched the Winter Olympics the other day. There's 2 or 3 things that, yeah, I think the bobsleigh, as long as I had a really big friend that could push it quicker than I could, that would be. I would love to do something like that, or maybe the one where you go down on the back of a tray, the sort of luge. But yeah, I think I'd love to do something like that. That looks like an awful lot of fun, although unbelievably scary. So yeah, I think getting in the Irish bobsleigh team, of which there is none, that would be that would be good.
So do you have any favorite movies or pop groups that you listen to? Any songs or both?
Oh God, yeah, I'm quite eclectic on my music, so I'm probably historically be people like the Jam. I like to listen to back in that period. I mean, you asked me about things people wouldn't know about me. I was a bit of a new romantic back in the day, so I'd like Duran Duran or Teardrop Explodes, those sort of retro sort of bands back in the 80s. The 80s was a strange time to be a teenager, because you were either into the new romantic scene or you're a punk or a mod. It was all like, yeah, you sort of, everyone picked their own. So yeah, I like all my music now. I don't mind this. I'll listen to anything. But I suppose the Jam would be the sort of one of my favorite bands. And film wise, again, I'm not sure I've got a favorite. Yeah, I mean, Elf would be one of my favorites in terms of a bit of a Christmas film, but I do like a comedy, or a serious sort of Shawshank Redemption, something like that. So thinking of films that have stuck in my mind. Yeah, but I like a cinema visit.
Got it. If Hollywood makes a movie about Rory Murphy's life, which movie star would you like to play your role?
Oh Christ, an unbelievably good-looking, funny one. So if they could match them up, yeah, I don't. Yeah, who would I like? Yeah, no, a sort of young Brad Pitt, not the one we got now. I think who would I think? Yeah, we talked about Superman earlier, so Henry Cavill is a good-looking fella. So so a good-looking fella with I mean, it'd be terribly typecast. It's more likely to be someone like Mr. Bean would be my so Rowan Atkinson or something like that probably. So I think some Hollywood A-lister would be my choice to play me, albeit that would be the worst casting ever. So I think it's more Rowan Atkinson than it is Henry Cavill.
That's nice. I'm sure they'll be listening at some point.
Yeah, no, I mean, they might well give me a ring. I'll play it myself because I'd obviously be such a screen icon. So.
Any producers, please reach out. Yes, so Rory, you have traveled heavily as well, both for all your triathlons and also, otherwise. Do you have any favorite place that you've been traveled to?
Yeah, I mean, holiday wise, we well, two places. One holiday wise, we tend to go to the same place in Mallorca most years, to Palencia, which is a lovely town just back from the beach in Puerto Palencia. So I love the sort of Spanish life. That would be that would be my choice of somewhere to live in the summer months in terms of Palencia in Mallorca. But on the flip side, the other place I do love is New York. So we went to, just pre-COVID, we went to New York for New Year, actually, New Year 2020, as it was 1920, sort of 3 months before COVID hit. Yeah, no, I love New York. I love the cosmopolitan nature of it, the craziness of it. It's like London on steroids. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't live in New York, but if I wanted to go somewhere for 3 or 4 days, then New York would be my choice. And I think if I was looking for somewhere to holiday, in terms of, it would certainly, and relax as opposed to just travel, would be New Yorker. And I love going back to Ireland as well. So going back to Ireland's got, for me, yeah, culturally, and the people for me in Ireland is very sort of very relaxing, different pace of life. So yeah, so a few places. I think if you said I had 3 days and 3 days to go somewhere, I'd go to New York. If I needed 2 weeks of rest, I'd go to Palencia in Mallorca, which is probably my favourite place.
Perfect. That's good. So, Rory, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Yeah, there's a few people. We've had. I've been really blessed. I said earlier, I've been really blessed by people that have sort of changed my career. Or so the first, I was recruited into Taylor Woodrow back in '87 by a chap called Simon Watts, who's well retired now, and he was a great advocate for me. I mean, he put me at ease on the. I'll never forget on my interview, and he's probably used this joke a few times on people, but it was. We finished the interview as a nervous 18-year-old lad, and he said, "Well, Roy," he said, "you're the best person I've seen today." And he said, "You're the first," and that sort of comedy with him lasted. He then recruited me. He was a great advocate for development and training, and helped me, and was one of those people that made sure that I got all the qualifications I needed. And then as I went through my career, there's a couple of other people along the way that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, I think, and in my construction era. So there's a chap called Brendan Moorhan in Taylor Woodrow at the time, who plucked me off one site and stuck me in a role which I didn't think I could do myself. But he said, "No, you'll be fine, Rory, you can do that." And that probably put me on the career path I'm on now. So he intervened. He intervened into my career to move me forward. So that was lovely. And then in terms of who I'm working with now, in terms of my MD at work, we work as a pair, Tony, he's been very influential in sort of supporting my career and giving me an opportunity. So those sort of three in terms of that. But other people that I've got one of my, well, there's a number of people that have been influential in the way I think as well. We've got, there's people I've come across in my own career that have really, changed the way I think about things. So I work with a lady called Victoria Hughes at the moment. She's and worked with her for about 10 or 12 years. She's a passionate sort of sustainability, environmental expert, and she changed the way I've thought about business and responsibility. She's always been very intellectual about those sort of things, and sort of educated me. So that's been great. And actually, there are numerous people that have helped my career just through the efforts they've put in, because I've been blessed. There's hundreds of people that have worked with me, for me, over the last 30 years, and I'm only doing the role I'm doing now because of them. And I can't look back on my career to anyone that I thought, "Oh, crikey, that's been a bit of a nightmare of a person to work with or manage." And people have always given me the support and encouragement, and delivered everything I needed. So I've been really, so I think whilst there's been people that have come along that have changed the direction of my career in the role that I've done, actually me to be successful has been founded off hundreds of people being excellent that worked for me and with me, so I never forget that. I mean, it's I've always been one of those people that if you recruit people or employ people, that I've always want the best people you can get. And I've got lots of examples of people that have gone on to great careers themselves that have worked for me, not necessarily in VINCI or Taylor Woodrow or anything else, have gone on all around the world. And and I think as long as I've played some part in their development of their career, because they've certainly played a part in mine. Because the more you go away from doing the day job, the more you go away from working on a project in terms of managing and supporting teams, then your success is absolutely based on how good those teams are. So how you support, develop, nurture, manage the difficult times for them and that's made me successful, if that makes sense. So I think it's certainly not always someone that's thought about me and my career and directed me, although there's 3 or 4 people in the 30 odd years that did make a difference. Actually, I've been successful because the teams that have worked for me have been successful, and I would think there would be hundreds of those definitely around the period, and that persists today. I mean, I'm blessed to have the team we've got now. I mean, you can't do a role like this without having a great team around you and working with you. So the people that have the most influence on my career are the people that deliver, because I can't be successful without them. I don't spend all my days worrying about how our teams are performing. They're all been excellent. So yeah, I've been very lucky. I've had a great employer. I've met people certainly through the RICS as well, some great people there that have really helped and supported me, and just been always willing to give me an opportunity, I think. So there's countless. I mean, I've been blessed to work with thousands of people, I suspect, over 35 years. And as I said right at the beginning of this, I always treasure whenever I see a project or a role, or if I go to one of our own projects now, it's the team. It is the team you remember, not the building. You see the thing, or now if we go to see a hospital or a school or our sort of mobile teams, when you go, you begin to think about the teams that are there. You think, oh, I'm going to meet so and so today, I'm going to see them. That's what's kept me in this industry. Actually, that's what's kept me here is how enjoyable it is with the people.
Totally, that's it. And how about family?
Yeah, my family wise, in terms of influence, I think I had a very supportive, a very strict dad and a very supportive mum. I think, and I think people of my generation will probably resonate with that in different communities. But my dad my mum was very nurturing, so I think she was a big influence in terms of my sort of softer skills, for want of a better word, if I've got any. But my dad was very sort of wanted you to be the best you can. I mean, he wasn't. My dad was not an academic or anything, but understood that you only get out of life what you put in. Those sort of things. When he said, so he gave me a grounding, and the rest of my family, I suppose, in terms of that, and clearly the support I've had from my wife of sort of 25 years in terms of having the ability. Because equally, so you've got to be able to go and work and. So Claire's been brilliant at sort of bringing up the family and being in a, and that sounds terribly traditional. I don't mean it that way. She's got a profession of her own, but in terms of she's always given me the latitude and the space to develop my career as much as I want. So and that's taken a lot. So and I mean, I'm massively grateful for that as well. So I've been lucky. Lucky across the board. I've had supportive employers. I've got a fantastically supportive family, and I've had a great team around me consistently. So and I don't think that's luck. I think you make your own luck, don't you, in anything in career, and so you treat people as you expect to be treated, and you would want them to be treated. So one of the advantages for me of growing up from the ground upwards, as I'd say, is that I respect all our teams. I mean, and I think I'd have no qualms at talking to any of our 2,200 team, and they would know that they'll always get a piece of me. I'll always give them time, and I'm genuine and authentic with them, and I think that's what I've grown up with, because I've always operated with all sorts of people. So I think I've had my career isn't finished. I'm making it sound like it's finished. I've had a great career, and I'm enjoying my role. So, but it's founded on, it's founded on support of a family and an employer, but also founded on the people that deliver. It's been brilliant.
Thank you. I think totally you're blessed. You to be blessed, stay blessed, and continue to share more Rory. So, Rory, what's the best piece of advice you've received and from whom?
Oh, best piece of advice. Wow, I've had lots of advice, I suppose, over the time. Yeah, I'm not sure if someone giving me specific advice. I think I'll tell you what I got. What another thing that really sort of stuck with me is one of the team I talked about there that helped my career. What he taught me was when I was new into my sort of more senior role and I was presenting. So you get thrown into a more senior role and you present to your peers. So we had a couple of big conferences back in the day 2000 and something, when I was new into sort of role as a senior member of the team, and I presented to everybody, and what he used to do, which no one had ever done before, and it really stuck with me, is that we'd finished the presentation, we'd finished the conference, and everybody would be heading off home, and he'd always ring me, and he'd ring me and go, well, how do you think it went today, Rory? And then he'd say, well, what about this and what about that? He'd give me like feedback, and at the time I didn't notice it was feedback, if that makes sense, because I was probably not thinking enough about it. But what it used to make me feel really good. It was really good that he'd ring up and say, oh, you could have done this, you could have done that. He was critiquing, he wasn't criticizing at all, but it made me feel like and it made me improve. And I think what that has done for me is that the importance of feedback or one-to-ones, or having sort of proper conversations with people and nurturing people is something. So it wasn't really advice, but it was how I was being treated by someone that I saw as quite senior, that I was thinking, wow, he's actually taken time to ring me up, and he's actually taken time to go, yeah, but yeah, you did really well on that, but why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? And that's really stuck with me. It stuck with me how it made me feel, if that makes sense. And then now I know with my own team and with anybody, actually, and I'll help anyone, is that if people want a bit of advice, or if someone's doing stuff and they're not quite sure, then my door's always open. And because that small bit of help goes a long way for people. And particularly the more senior you get in a business, is that people might see you as a bit aloof or a bit distant. It's like, no, it's just, I'll help. I want everybody to get better. So in terms of, it wasn't really a word of advice, but I think it was, I've learnt, I've seen lots of different management styles over my career. Some of them horrific, some of them fantastic. So I've probably learnt from people, as opposed to have sort of words of advice. I think I've seen some styles and think, oh no, that's not that is not the way I'd like to be managed, or how I would manage. And on the flip side, I've had people where I go, wow, yeah, okay, that's just those little things make a difference. I think that's the thing for me. It's the little things that do make a difference in terms of how you manage people. It's taking time.
Totally. I think 100%. I think you nailed it. Rather than to pick up one word, one line of advice, you learn from every person you meet in life and work. That's amazing way of looking at it. Rory. So Rory, I think in the FM profession, there is a lot of myths that people talk about. This is how things are, etc. Is there anything from your career, both construction plus FM, that you've seen, that you've heard, that you want to debunk?
Yeah, I think from the FM world, I mean, I think people still talk about. I mean, it is really frustrating to be sort of the FM being a sort of low skill industry, and it's so untrue. It's just that frustrates the life out of me, in terms of the facilities management is. It's a broad church. Facilities management is a broad church of services, undoubtedly. But there's something for everyone in facilities management, whether you want to be a data analyst, whether you want to understand automation or artificial intelligence or sort of digital advances. So there's a career for everybody, and also the engineering capability. So even in the cleaning fraternity, some of the sort of input of robotics and technology, and it's an exciting industry. So it frustrates me, drives me mad when people talk about sort of want to denigrate facilities management. Facilities management is at one end is a high-skilled, data-driven asset management profession, if we want to talk about it like that. Or we can look at it that it's all about developing user experience, and it's about the value of real estate. So recently, in the RSS, we've issued the sort of IBOS standard, which is all about building in use. So it's actually around how do you increase the value of a building through the services you provide? So the better it is for the end user, the more valuable that asset becomes, because people want to work there. And it's that intellectual thought that I want us to be having debates around that. I want people to understand the difference we can make in facilities management. I don't want to be having debates around the sort of minutiae of lift maintenance. I want us to be talking about so what we do and why we do it, and what effect it has on big global things. So the environment, and as I said, in generation of social value, but also the work we do can drive investor value. I mean, that's exciting for people coming into the business, coming into this sector. If people want to say, well, what do you do in FM? You could say anything. Some people will say, oh, we just do toilets, or we just, and that would drives me insane. Whereas on the flip side of it, you go, actually, we increase real estate value by delivering expert services, or we understand the digital environment. It's there's so much more to it. So if I could debunk that, and if I can continue to debunk that with lots of like-minded professionals, then because we will never attract anyone into our business, into our sector, if we don't show the wide range of activities people can do. And it's a hugely rewarding role and job.
Totally. Thank you for nailing it, Rory. Rory, a final note. Successful career, triathlon, RICS. We talked about your life, career. What's something that you're looking forward in your immediate future?
Oh, in my immediate future. So it'd be nice to get a holiday this year. That'd be nice, having had 2 years of not going away. I'd like the world to settle down. That's yeah, and the world generally. I mean, I think we live in difficult times. I'd like, yeah. I mean, on a more serious note, I would like the world just to settle down. I think we as the human race just needs a little bit of downtime. We could do with 6 months of no bad news. I was saying to someone the other day, I would like to turn the news on and it'd be a story about a cat being rescued from a tree, as opposed to the Ukraine or COVID, or it's been a hard 2 years for everybody. So or 2.5 years. So yeah. So one, I'd like a holiday. I've got and I think just also getting out to see a bit more of our team through work. I mean, we've again been restricted over the last couple of years, so I'm looking forward to getting out and seeing people again, and just beginning to sort of re-engage with the teams that we feel like we've sort of been separated from over the last couple of years. So in the immediate term, I'm looking forward to that. And from a professional perspective, the work I'm doing with the RICS on this member engagement group is really fascinating, and will hopefully, I'm hoping that progresses to be something of real worth, and actually we turn the tide. So I'd love in a year, 18 months time, for sort of the feedback from the membership to be, I mean, it's not all going to be positive, I get that, but I'd like to see the sort of dial shifting towards I would like to make it. I just want to make a difference. It'd be great to have looked at that work over this year and next year, however long we take doing it, and see the sort of dial of engagement and experience, and some of the noise around the RICS be turned more positive. And I'd love to sit back and go, yeah, okay, I was part of that with a great working group, but I've been sort of part of the change. That's what I'd like from a professional perspective, and from a work perspective. We've got our biggest contract going live in the next 3 weeks for the defence DIO. So I'd like that to land as well. So yes, we've got a lot going on in life, but all positive. I think we've got to remain positive in these challenging times.
Perfect. I think that's a very positive note to end here as well, Rory. Thank you for your amazing energy and all-rounded sharing here on life perspective, to learning from people, to RICS, to the myths that we need to debunk in FM, to progress, to be forward-looking, and to many more. Thank you and for your time today. It's been an absolute privilege to host you, Rory, and wish you, your family, your loved ones, everybody at VINCI, all the good health and happiness. Continue to inspire us, and I'll be so looking forward to see you again face to face in the coming days and weeks.